Hi folks, my name is Christian Weiss, and I have been almost a lifelong resident of the Riverside School District. My family moved to Leroy Thompson Road in 1978, and I began my education at Riverside in the 8th grade in the fall of 1978, and I graduated from Riverside in 1983. My father was in the original first class of graduates in 1952, and all three of my sons, I presently have a 5th grader, Eric, at Parkside Elementary, a freshman, Alexander, and a sophomore, Benjamin, at Riverside. And I'm here today because I need to put out some information in regard to the present bond levy initiative known as Issue 1, which the voters are going to vote on between now and Election Day being May 3rd. There's a lot of misinformation I feel that the school district has put out to try to induce the voters to vote for this school levy. And so I'd like to kind of go over the information that they haven't put out, the other side of the story, or the complete picture, if you will. So what we are supposed to vote on is Issue 1, and this is a copy of the language which was filed with the Board of Elections. And what we are basically told is that we are voting on a 5.37 mil levy, which will allow the school to go out and sell bonds to fill a coffer with $147,725,000. These bonds will be paid over a term of 37 years. The first thing that they're not telling you is that there's interest on this. The presumed rate of interest is 4%, and that would add approximately $135 million to this. So we're at about $282 million. And that's the principal and interest that you, as a property owner and a taxpayer, will be expected to pay over the next 37 years. And the basis for that is a 5.37 mil levy. What does 5.37 mils mean? Well, in round numbers, it means that you're going to pay $537 per year on the tax valuation. That's $537 per $100,000 of tax valuation. That calculation is a little bit complicated because they take your appraised value or market value and they multiply it times 0.35 or 35%. So for example, if you own a home that is $1 million in value, and I know not many people have a home that valuable, but I'm making the math easy, then the 0.35% means your tax valuation would be $350,000. And if you had a home that expensive, you would end up paying $537 times 3.5 or $350,000. And so to give you a little bit more relevant information, if your market value of your home, not the tax value, but the market value is $200,000, you're going to pay $375.84 a year. If it's $300,000, you'll pay $563 a year. $400,000, $751.68 a year. I think that probably brackets the better part of the real estate residentially owned in the district. So once again, you're not voting to spend $147 million. You're voting for ultimately over $280 million. Okay, but that's not where things stop. The other thing that they're not putting out is that they do not presently have any type of construction drawings, specifications, layouts, plans, floor plans, or even an artist's rendering of what they propose to build. The school district has gone out and they've conducted PowerPoint presentations at numerous times and places where they show you what their plan is, and I'm going to talk about each of their slides in detail as we go through here. And again, there is no plan in existence. Okay, the truth of the matter is that at the present time, nobody knows what this school will cost to build. Okay, but let me tell you some things that we do know. Firstly, in order for this to be put on the ballot, the school board had to make a vote whether or not to put the initiative before the voters. And you should all know that the school board is split 3 board members to 2 in favor of putting this on the ballot. So how did that break down? Scott Fischel and Tom Hack voted against putting this on the ballot. Their opinion was that we don't need to tear down Riverside and John R., that we could renovate the existing buildings for vastly less money than $147 million and move forward. Jennifer Hardin, Lori Kerniski, and Belinda Grasky voted for this levy, and it is the reason that you have to vote on it is because of those 3 individuals who voted to put it on the ballot. Okay, now leading up to the school board's vote to place this on the ballot, which occurred in February, there were numerous school board meetings where this was discussed, and numerous individuals, including myself, came forward and stated that, you know, for many valid reasons, this shouldn't be done at this time. Not the least of which is inflation, supply chain issues, a war in Europe, and the uncertainties of the political spectrum are going to make it impossible, in my opinion, to execute this project with $147 million and complete the work without going over budget. Okay, now where did this all begin? Well, back in 2013, the OFCC, that's the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, issued this report to the Riverside District. This is 783 pages long. It's about the size of, for those of you who used to have dial phones, the Cleveland phone book. And what this document basically boils down to, my opinion on this, is it's a propaganda document, which is to try to put forth that we need to tear down the old schools and build all new school buildings. Okay, so what the school officials did is they boiled it down to a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to go through that in a minute. They came up with a 3-phase plan. Phase 1 has already been completed. That is that they built 2 elementary schools, Parkside on 608 and Riverview on Madison Avenue. They tore down the old Madison Avenue school, and then they decommissioned 3 other schools, Leroy Elementary, Haddon Elementary, and Hale Road. Curiously, they didn't tear down the other 3 buildings. They sold the Leroy Elementary School to the township, Leroy Township, for $10,000. The Haddon Elementary School and the Hale Road Elementary School, believe it or not, are still schools. They were picked up by the Educational Service Center for the Western Reserve, which is basically a charter school. And it's being operated as a school. In fact, I'm told that Riverside District is going to be leasing back, or has leased back, some of those classrooms to run preschool, which this was originally a district building. They sold Haddon for $500,000, and they sold Hale Road for $110,000. So for $610,000, they sold 2 school buildings, which are still being used as schools. And by the way, that school's competing with Riverside for students. Additionally, they tore down Madison Avenue School. So let's talk about the 2 schools they created. My son is a 5th grader at Parkside Elementary. It's a beautiful school. It's very large. One thing that some of the teachers have opined to me is that the classrooms are actually too big. Think about this. If you're an elementary school teacher and you have 20 to 25 students to teach, and they're kindergarten through 1st grade, or 5th grade rather, you have to effectively, it's an exercise in herding cats to some extent. You know, you've got a bunch of little kids that you have to get to sit down and pay attention and learn something. You know, when you have a room, and I've been in my son's classroom and some of the other classrooms, they're arguably 3 to 3.5 times the size of what old classrooms used to be, what some of the people my age would have experienced in going to elementary school in the 70s or 80s. Another thing they talk about is safety, enhanced safety features. A lot of people aren't aware we spent an extra $2 million per elementary school to put not regular glass windows, but ballistic glass windows. And the school district has expounded on the fact that we should take stock in our schools much safer. That might be the case, but after a recent school board meeting, I spoke to one of Lake County Sheriff's deputies, Deputy Reed, who actually had retired as lieutenant from the sheriff's force and then came back to work as a deputy and as one of the school resource officers. And his opinion is that putting the ballistic glass in is really a waste of money. Think about this. What if there's a fire in the school? How do the children escape the building if they can't break the windows to get out? How does the fire department get in if they can't get in through the main entryway and they have to break in to put out a fire? But in the case of an active shooter or a bad actor in our schools, if the SWAT team has to come and breach the building perimeter, they've got an additional obstacle of ballistic glass. If a police sniper has a shot to take out a bad actor, a shooter in the school, he can't shoot through ballistic glass and take out a bad guy. So while we might take solace in the fact that our children are in what is arguably a fortress type building with concrete block walls and ballistic glass, that has also created other problems which they fail to mention to you. So phase one was the elementary schools, and that's complete. This bond levy is to initiate phase two, which would be to build a brand new campus for 6 through 12, which would be divided 6th, 7th, and 8th grade on one side, 9, 10, 11, 12 on the other side, and then ultimately to tear down the existing Riverside High School and John R. Williams buildings. Why do they want to do this? Okay, what I'm showing you here, these are the slides from a PowerPoint presentation that's been used in every talk that the school district rather, has given to try to get you, the voter, to vote for this. Okay, the first slide says Phase 2, New Riverside 6 through 12 Campus Project Overview. Okay, and the agenda here is the District Facilities Plan Overview and the Phase 2 Riverside Campus Project Summary. Okay, how will a new building impact learning and why now? Those are the first two slides. Okay, then they talk about the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, and that is this 783-page document that was prepared in 2008 and then revised in 2013. So they have a document that is now 9 years out of date. They've updated cost projections, but again, this was not based on cost estimates done by a contractor off an actual blueprint. It's done on a guess, and it's done on the thought of, well, we think inflation will be X, so we're going to put Y million dollars on top of our previous numbers, and they've arrived at the number of $147.7 million. This OFCC study also puts forth that the buildings were all in poor condition with the exception of Lamouth Middle School. And so they rank these buildings on a number of metrics, and basically, they show you a slide where everything's in red. Everything's poor except for Lamouth Middle School. Okay? Once again, I've previously covered that of the 4 elementary schools decommissioned, 2 of them are still schools. Okay? And they were sold for $600,000, and phase 1 cost us $38.5 million to build 2 elementary schools. Then they go into showing you a picture of an inside of some school building somewhere. This happens to be North High School, and they say, why now? Okay? Why now? It's for the students. We need to prepare students for opportunities in the global marketplace. We need to build the buildings become increasingly difficult to adapt to 21st century learning. My question is, what is 21st century learning? Okay, I'm an old school guy. I think that the kids need to learn reading, writing, and arithmetic in the elementary grades. They need to learn physics. They need to learn calculus. They need to learn mathematics, literature, and so forth in the high school. And certainly there's going to be different tracks. There'll be the children that are university bound. There are those that are going to be vocational technical training bound, whether that be Auburn Career Center or some other post-high school graduate program. And then there'll be the kids that just simply get a high school diploma and do the best they can in life. Okay. They say here, why now for our community? And they bring up, and they continue to beat us over the head with, Riverside is the oldest school building in the county. once Fairport High School completes the construction of their new school, Riverside will be the oldest building in the county. Well, that isn't really entirely true. The original Riverside High School building was started around 1948-49. The first graduating class was 1952. But that's just the Riverside original building. John R. Williams wasn't built until 1956. The board offices, which is a substantial amount of square footage on the back left corner of the school, was built much later, I believe 1965. And then the entire media center addition, which linked Riverside to John R. Williams, wasn't built until, I believe, 2000. So while they tell you the building is old and outdated, the entire building isn't as old as they say. They talk about the cost of operating and maintaining the current building continuing to rise. But in a later slide, they talk about that they're only putting $250,000 a year into maintenance and upkeep on both John R. Williams and Riverside High School. And they're telling you that in passing the levy will ensure property values remain strong. I would contend that that's not the case at all. And we can look to our neighbor in Painesville City, and we can see that Painesville City Schools recently, within the last 10 years, built all brand new buildings. Yet they're the worst performing school in Lake County. And why is that? Okay, this document here would lead you to believe that what they want you to do, build this new campus, is going to make us a better school district, when our neighbor, they did the very same thing, and it didn't improve the academics, it didn't improve the graduation rates, it didn't improve the test scores, it didn't make the school better. Okay, I think that we all know what makes a school good is the teachers and the parents, and how the parents raise their children to value an education and work with and partner with the school to do that. That could be done in a tent if it had to be. Okay, we just experienced for the first time in over 100 years a global pandemic. Everybody had to go home. We all got through that. We worked from home. Some of us stayed home with our children. Our children worked off of their Chromebooks. You know, the first year of it in 2020 in the spring, our kids went home. Things were disorganized. I don't fault the school district for the fact that they couldn't have known that they'd have to send everyone home in March and not return to school for the remainder of the school year, but we did get through it. And as coming into the school year in the fall of 2020, the students went back to school in the classrooms. Come forward to just before Thanksgiving of 2020, they felt the need to send the students home again. And this time, they had a much better academic plan. The students used their Chromebooks from home. So I would put forth that we don't need to have a brand new school campus to continue to educate our children. I'm not advocating for the children going home and working on Chromebooks. I'm not advocating for the entire school district to homeschool. Okay, that's certainly a choice some families will make, and I honor their decision there. But again, what I'm trying to reinforce is that we don't have to build a brand new school campus to maintain excellent academics, excellent students coming out of the Riverside district. Okay, so the notion on this slide here, it says Riverside is 73 years old and current enrollment is 1,793 students. The age of the building is irrelevant. If the building is well maintained, and both Riverside and John R. are built, they were built to last well beyond 100 years. They're brick exterior. Most of the roof is slate on it. The foundations are solid. Arguably, some of the mechanical systems should be updated. Heating, ventilating, air conditioning, electrical, plumbing, windows. Okay. Some of the flat roof areas have some leaks. Those can be fixed. Okay. And that won't cost $147 million. On enrollment projections, once again, they're taking figures derived from outside sources, and they're trying to lead you to believe that the school's overcrowded. That's not the case. Okay, in fact, they only actually have one student more than what the building load can handle at this point in time. The next thing they talk about is how the facilities plan was created. Okay, there was a small group of people that got together and formed a committee. But ultimately, the task was left up to the OFCC to create this document. Okay, My contention is this is a propaganda document to try to lull people into the notion that, oh my God, it's 783 pages. Number one, I don't have time to read that. And number two, it must be right if it's this much weight, you know? Boom, okay? So what I'm saying is that this whole agenda is to mislead us into thinking that we have to have a new school when in fact we don't, okay? They claim to have talked to community members. They claim to have had parents and students involvement, and that the themes that they want to do is improve the safety and security, increase personalization of learning, increase course offerings, and create new programming, okay? They show us a bunch of pictures from, these are the elementary schools, by the way, that were built. Then they go into showing us pictures of other schools that are not Riverside, and talking about the fact that they're going to have a 21st century learning experience, okay? To me, these look like more of a Google campus and less of the kind of traditional school that I went to, which was Riverside, by the way. You know, if you're Google, you have arguably almost as much money as God, and you can spend lavishly to create these spaces. You know, once again, you as the taxpayer have to bear the burden of this, okay? While we all might have liked to have bought a 5,000 or 6,000 square foot home when we bought our homes, or we might like to move into a bigger home, we realize our own financial capabilities, and we make do with what we have in many cases, okay? Or we buy within our budget. And so part of this talk is that point, buying within the budget. Phase 2, planning timeline, okay? They had meetings from September 2018 to February 2020 to discuss the Phase 2 planning. And then they had a timeline to get this into construction by 2022. What are the benefits of a new Riverside campus? They're talking about enhanced educational opportunities via collaborative and flexible space, okay? Basically, what they keep showing in these slides, this one's of Richmond Heights Upper Schools, you see a big cavernous room, and I don't even count 20 chairs in this room, okay? Melinda Malacker got up and at length discussed how we don't teach the way we used to anymore. We don't sit the children in rows and make them listen to us. This is a slide they brought up. Why teach like this, okay? Chairs in the rows, teacher teaches from the front of the room. They talk about this is how people are learning today, okay? Well, in my experience going to John R. and Riverside, I sat in chairs like this. They were not bolted to the floor. And there were many times when the teachers had us rearrange our chairs for a team project or a competition, and the teachers did move throughout the room, okay? When I was in high school, we didn't have iPhones. Kids would bring comic books. Kids would bring other magazines, and they would try to hide them inside of their textbook. And so the teacher walking about the room would see Johnny with a Spider-Man comic book, and he'd walk over and just take the comic book. Or he'd see Susie writing a note to Julie, whatever. Okay, the teacher interacted with the classroom and moved about the classroom for numerous reasons: to maintain order, to maintain the discipline, to keep redirecting the students' focus so that they were on point and listened to the presentation. Okay, so once again, when they show me a picture, which this is North Royalton High School, of this large cavernous room with, looks to me to be a 2.5 to 3 story ceiling in it, okay? This is very expensive square footage to build, okay? This costs far more than a conventional classroom. You can see here, there aren't that many chairs. Now, whether the tables are bolted to the floor or movable isn't really all that material, okay? We're talking about creating a very large amount of square footage for very relatively few students, okay? And what is the utility of that? Okay, all of us live in homes where our bedrooms, most of them, are a normal size. Would we like to have a 30-foot by 40-foot master bedroom? Sure, but can we afford that? Okay, and that goes to these classes that they're building too. They like to bring forth that they're going to be adding vocational industrial training, and they talk about the fact that we have a new welding laboratory. This was a $450,000 donation from the Lincoln Electric Company. And we do appreciate Lincoln's grant to the school. And they have created a state-of-the-art welding laboratory in one of the old machine shop spaces. Okay? And do we need more classes like that? Possibly. Do we have to build a whole new school campus to achieve that? My answer would be no. A wing or an addition could be built to the building for vocational training and those types of classes that do require greater space, and it could be done for far less than $147 million. The other piece that was sent out to the public is this pipeline. Okay, and again, it's a communication from Riverside District to the district homeowners. And this talks about phase one, $38.5 million to construct 2 schools. They mention in here that the existing schools prior to the elementaries being built had a combined age of 346 years. So what? Why is that relevant? Okay, I could take you to the East Coast, to Europe. We will find buildings that are 200 plus years old, that have been renovated over the course of centuries and are still being in use by some of America's most prestigious prep schools, universities, and high schools. Okay, so the age of the building really has nothing to do with the need for a new campus. They talk about the fact that that this bond levy is to be used for new construction, improvements, renovations, and additions to the old school facilities, and that it cannot be used for teacher salaries or operating funds. Okay, well, that creates a huge problem right there. Number one, I want all of you to understand that this levy is not going to get us better paid teachers. It's not going to get us newer buses or more efficient buses or anything like that. This is to build a building, okay, a campus. And if you don't have the money once you've built it to pay the teachers better and or other operating costs, then you have a great, beautiful palace of a building, but if you can't utilize it because you don't have the money, what have you gained? Okay. Again, they continue to talk about how the buildings are in poor condition. I keep coming back with the fact that the buildings are sound. Their walls, roof, foundations are all sound. Mechanical systems can be upgraded. They talk about the fact that there's only 2 outlets in each classroom. And while that may be true, and I'm sure it is true, think about this. The schools still operate with old fluorescent lighting systems, long banks of T8 fluorescent bulbs. I can tell you that simply upgrading the electrical system to utilize LED lighting would have multiple benefits. Number one, you don't have to build a whole new building to upgrade the lighting to LED. When you upgrade to LED, you're going to recover approximately 80% of the energy used in the room. So for example, if you take the number of T8 bulbs and the wattage that they're using, replace them with LED lighting, you get lighting that's more daylight quality, better lumens, and studies show that people working under LED lighting are less fatigued than those working under fluorescent lights, and the energy saved, because LED uses about 20% of the energy of fluorescent, can then be redirected and used in outlets and smart boards and other electrical needs within that actual classroom or distributed to other classrooms. Another thing that I'd like to point out, both Riverside and John R. Williams have a central hallway that runs the length of the spine of the building, and the ceilings are 14 feet high throughout both buildings on both floors. This is actually a good thing, because it allows for mechanical systems to be run overhead and suspended from those 14-foot ceilings without having to break open walls and tear things apart. Holes can be cut through into the classrooms, okay, above what would later be a suspended acoustic tile ceiling. And all of these mechanical upgrades can be hidden from view. The building envelope that needs to be heated, instead of having a 14-foot high ceiling, you can install a 9 or an 8-foot high acoustic tile ceiling All of your mechanicals run above that. They're hidden from view, and you don't have to heat that space between the drop ceiling and the upper ceiling, okay? Makes things more energy efficient. Other things that can be done with a LED lighting system. LED lighting systems allow for a mesh network to be a component of the system. That would allow someone at a central station from a laptop to control which lights are on, which lights are off, any of the electronic devices and heating systems within the rooms in the school, and also even locking doors and unlocking them, okay? And it would also eliminate the dead spaces that the students experience with the Wi-Fi system, okay? Which is another thing that's been talked about in these meetings and in this pipeline, okay? As far as air conditioning, that's been a big issue. We had a couple of days 2 years ago when the students had to go home because it was too hot. When the ceilings are 14 feet high and you can open the windows, you know, if the school wants to start school a week before Labor Day, well, you're going to have a couple of hot days, okay? It's not typical of the entire school year. But if we're going to upgrade these systems, we could put what are called split-phase heating cooling systems on every room. This, to you, would look a lot like when you go to a motor hotel and you have a thermostat in your room and there's a heating unit at the window. Okay, on the outside is the condenser, and each room can have its own independent heating cooling system that can work in conjunction with the central steam plant such that the mesh network can be used to control when the air conditioning and heating systems are turned on the east side of the building versus the west side from morning to afternoon, to balance out those peaks and spikes in temperature and make a more uniform, more comfortable environment inside the school, and to maximize the energy efficiency of the use of that. Okay, so what I'm putting forth is numerous ideas where we can renovate what we have, keep what we have, and still maintain the academics, the scholarship, the student-teacher experience that the students need to perform well. Okay, folks, in conclusion, the key points about what you need to be informed with before you make your decision to go to the polls are: number one, the school board is divided 3-2 on the issue, okay? 2 board members voted against even putting this on the ballot because they believe the schools can be renovated for much less than $147 million. That's Tom Hack and Scott Fischel. 3 of the board members, Lori Kerniski, Belinda Grassi, and Jen Harden, believe that we can't salvage the school and we must build a brand new campus. That's going to cost you not just the $147,725,000 that is stated in the language that is at the poll, but it also includes interest at 4% over 37 years. So the real number, folks, is something north of $280 million. That is on the assumption that they could actually build the campus they proposed to build for $147.7 million. Okay, the second key point I want to convey is that at the present time, given the world situation, supply chain, the inflation rate in the United States, war in Europe, and factors beyond the control of the Riverside School Board, beyond the control of any contractor that might construct these buildings, the construction industry right now is of the opinion that any major infrastructure project will probably experience 35 to 40% cost overruns. And a good case in point, let's look at Concord Township. Concord Township voted in the fall of 2020 for a levy to build 2 fire stations. That was an $8 million levy. At the present time, the fire station across from Fire Station 1 is, they're breaking ground for it as I speak, and that particular fire station is looking at cost overruns, bringing the total to about $9.8 million. So they passed the levy for $8 million for 2 stations. 1 station right now is looking like it's going to cost $9.8 million. That's a 22.5% uptick over $8 million. But when you account for the fact that it's only for 1 fire station and not for 2, the point I'm trying to illustrate is that the cost overruns on a project of this magnitude are beyond the control of anyone. And my personal belief, and the belief of many other people in the construction industry, is that $147.7 million will not be enough money to build this district, okay, this campus rather. Why is that important? Well, let's look at it from this standpoint. If we pass this levy, the school board will go out and sell the bonds, and they will collect $147.7 million. And only then they'll engage architecture and engineering firms to create the blueprints, the specs, the drawings, the floor plans, site studies, to then start to estimate the construction costs. Okay, that'll have to be done in an environment of double-digit inflation and supply chain breakdowns, so that anyone bidding on the project is most likely not going to offer a lump sum bid or an at-risk contract. And I can virtually guarantee you that anyone bidding this project is going to bid it as a fee-for-service or cost plus, which is two of the same kind of animal. But it means if I'm the general contractor, I have no way of knowing the things that I can't control. But I am certainly not going to financially obligate myself to deliver a finished product, whether it's a house, a school, a power plant, or a bridge, okay, where I go bankrupt building it because costs and delays that I never could control came up in the course of doing it. Who pays for that? The owner pays for that. In this case, the owner is the Riverside School District. In this case, the owner is you, the taxpayer. Because if the school board embarks upon engaging a contractor to commence construction and the construction costs exceed the amount of bonds available, that's when we have a real problem, okay? That's when something has to be decided upon, whether or not to finish the project and then try to figure out how to pay for it, finish the project and come back to the voters for more money. Is that something you want to see happen with your tax dollars? You have to make a decision, and arguably, since this bond levy will affect you for the next 37 years, this may be one of the most important tax decisions that you make for the remainder of your lifetime. Thank you for your time and attention.